if the EFL have charged Leicester and the Premier League choose not to continue with that charge, we're sort of entering dangerous territory.
What's your view on parachute payments?
There's a lot of glumness because of the ownership, and people don't want to go to Ewood Park.
Getting him back from Aston Villa on loan was a massive move for Stockport County. So I think he's a very dangerous winger that I think if you're a fullback, you'd hate to face, and I think Newport County have done well to spot him.
Welcome back to the Sportsman Untitled. I'm joined by a Brummie dream team of Mr. Gab Sutton and Mr. Conor Keane. How are we doing, lads?
Really well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure, Steve. Always a pleasure.
Enjoying the international break so far?
Yeah, definitely. Well, for me, it's not really been a break because it still had League Two, almost a full billing, and a few games from League One as well.
Definitely, plenty on. We're going to get stuck straight into it, and we're going to go into the transfer window and have a quick look at everything that happened this summer, really. And we're going to be talking about the signings that have really impressed you so far this season. It could be anyone from the EFL. Let me know, Gab. Let's get started.
I think Louis Barry, we were talking about him earlier, getting him back from Aston Villa on loan was a massive move for Stockport County. He was absolutely phenomenal in the first 3 months of last season in their League Two title winning campaign, and crucial to a 12-match winning streak. And he got injured, which meant that he missed about 2/3 of the campaign. But I think, fit Louis Barry has enormous potential, and I think he's showing that in League One.
You thinking Stockport really going to push on this? Push on this season. They've been pushing on for so many seasons in a row. It's them and Wrexham are sort of going bar for bar and seeing if both of them can maybe get to the Championship this year. Can you see that run sort of lasting to the end of the season?
We'll see. I think these are two clubs with the resources to be very ambitious. I think it's a really competitive league. I'd like to wait and see 10 games in and see where we're at, because I think it's very easy to make a big call at this stage. I think both teams have tough tests to come, but looking good so far.
And Conor, do we have to look past your beloved Blues, who is your player of the sign of the season for League One?
Well, I've already picked my sign of the season, but another player that's impressed me is one of their defensive recruits, and that is Christoph Clara. I think he's, the term Rolls Royce defender gets thrown about so much, but I've been so impressed with him so far from what I've seen. He's strong with his duels, but he's also, he does exactly what Chris Davies obviously wanting from his players. He wants them to be strong on the ball, carrying it forward, and obviously we saw the other week against Wigan, like he played a brilliant pass between the lines to take out like two lines of Wigan and set up Willemsen, who then teed it up for Alfie May to get his fourth for the season. Like, I think he's an excellent player, and I think he's only going to get better as the season goes on.
It's looking sharp, and obviously Birmingham had a really good transfer window. If you look at the Championship, is there anybody that sticks out there?
I think in terms of the Championship, what's really impressed me is I think Callum O'Hare and him signing for Sheffield United. I think you've already seen him linking up brilliantly with Gus Hamer, former Coventry City teammate. I love O'Hare. I think he's got bags of energy. He's a great ball carrier, isn't he? And I think he's brought lots of creativity to Sheffield United.
He's a nice dynamic winger, really fits that sort of team mould. Is there anyone in your mind, Conor, for the Championship?
Yeah, and we briefly spoke about him before, is Yukio Hashi for Blackburn Rovers. I think he's been a real find so far. I think it's 2 goals he's got already so far. And considering, he hasn't started every game as well, it's like he's either, done well when he has started, or he's come on and had an impact. And I think over the course of the season, he could be crucial for Blackburn, where, obviously they've had a fantastic start, but obviously most people were thinking that they are most likely to go down this year. And I think he'll be key for them for Rovers, and obviously, I believe he will have quite a good season as well.
Quite the way to announce yourself as well, with that little scoop over the keeper in the first game of the season. Really nice to watch. Teams that did the best in the transfer window, out of the EFL, who are we kind of looking at? Obviously, we mentioned Blues. They've spent a lot of money, but maybe doesn't guarantee success. You look at the Championship, who's really sticking out?
I think for me, Walsall have done some really good business. They've signed Tommy Simkin on loan from Stoke, who's not only has got England Youth International pedigree, but has also done really well on loan in the National League before with Solihull Mills, which I think is always a good sign when you've got both. And then they've also signed Connor Barrett, who's thrived in the National League as well last season. So I think spotting top players in the National League and then being able to bring them in, I think, Connor Barrett for me is a big upgrade on what they had last season, and probably the same for Simkin as well.
As a Labourn, are they sort of following the sort of paths that Peterborough and Brentford have sort of had before, where they're picking up these players for cheap and they can maybe offload them in a year or two's time and really make some money and maybe bolster the coffers for next season?
Possibly, yeah. I really like the ownership of Walsall Trivella. I think they've done a lot of Ben Boycott's done a lot of good work, and I think he's put a lot of thought into the strategic side of things. I think Matt Sadler in his first season maybe didn't got good results, but maybe the football wasn't quite what Walsall fans wanted. But I think this year he's evolved the style a little bit, and you can see real progress being made. So yeah, Walsall looking like they could be among the promotion candidates.
What sort of takes it for you, Gab? Connor?
I have two, and one of them is the Championship, and it's Sheffield United, because, like, being honest, it completely changed my perception for how they would get on this season. I thought coming down, I thought they could be in for a tough time, because it seems like Chris Wilder, things weren't exactly happening in like his second stint. Obviously, you know, he's a legend at the club for what he did before, but it's like it seemed he obviously left them, didn't he? And obviously, as Borough, Watford didn't seem to have the same sort of effect. And obviously, second time you think, is it going to have the same sort of charm? And coming down with the squad as it was before any signings, I was really concerned for them. But the signings that they've made, obviously we've touched on Callum O'Hare, great pickup, especially on a free transfer. Harrison Burrows from Peterborough United, one of the best players in League One last year. Other names right now are evading me, but I'm sure they'll come back. But honestly, the window as a whole were absolutely great. And then as well was League One as well, Stockport, because like, they've already had a strong squad as it was, but they've just added some extra like quality. Obviously, Louis Barry, we've touched on already. Brilliant pickup to get back again, especially in a higher level, who he's already taken to brilliantly.
Ollie Norwood as well, Connor.
Norwood, yeah.
What a keep that is for League One.
A player I would have gladly welcomed at Blues just for the experience, because, you know, great player, like from his Championship days. But the thing as well with Stockport now is they have a really good squad. Everyone's talking about like Blues' transfer window and how much depth there is, but Stockport, on obviously a lesser budget, they've got brilliant depth in a lot of areas, which I think will go well for them this season.
Even getting international attention. Real Madrid picking up as the assistant manager. Who's up
yes,
there? So
yes, Andy Mack.
After it, yeah. So it's just it's really impressive what's going on at Stockport.
So really, the key to from all this is if you go to Stockport, you'll get picked up by Real Madrid. I think that's the.
That's what they'll be selling.
That's how it works. Yeah, absolutely.
On the other end of the scale, we're looking at teams that have done the worst in the transfer window, and you don't like to put the tag on teams. It's a bit cruel, it's a bit unfair, and you never know how things are going to work out. You might get three free transfers, and they all work out lovely. Is there teams that stick out to you that could have done more or are suffering because of?
There's Harrogate Town. One of the reasons I'm a little bit worried about them is I think they've had to cut their budget, and that's affected them in terms of their ability to strengthen in key areas, because they went into the start of the season thinking they've not really got an aerially dominant centre half, they've not really got a midfielder that I would back to really run games, and I don't think they've got an out number 9 other than Josh March, who hasn't got the best goal record. So that's your spine of the team that's probably a bit in question. So for me, Harrogate are ones that I would possibly question a little bit.
Are they sort of you're maybe not tipping them for relegation, but you're thinking that?
No, I think they will go down.
Yeah,
I think so. I'm a little bit worried about Morecambe and Accrington Stanley, but I think Harrogate will be down there.
There's a bit of pedigree in there as well. Connor?
Yeah, so my two were two Championship clubs, and they were Plymouth and Hull. Plymouth mainly because I think it was always going to be difficult when they went for the approach of the appointment of Wayne Rooney, because obviously he doesn't have the best record as a manager, and I feel like he probably could have done with a few extra players just to give him that extra fighting chance in what is bound to be a tough season for them. And I do wonder, is like there was interest, but I don't think there was any like credible bids for Morgan Whittaker over the summer. And part of me now is thinking, should they have potentially looked to cash in and try and like flesh the squad out with a bit more quality in other areas of the pitch? And the same goes for Hull as well, with the loss of like Jacob Greaves and Jaden Philogene. I just think that the players that they were bringing in to replace them aren't exactly upgrades. Like some they're there for the future, and then somewhere I think they've just tried to just add as many bodies as possible.
I think Connor makes a great point on Hull today, because it's one thing having the money for Philogene and Greaves and these players, but you've also got to bring those players in, the replacements in late in the window, and it's not ideal for team building. You know, I think they made a bad decision on Rosinia as well. Took a while to bring a manager in, so it's been a bit of a slow summer for Hull. And then so they're all of a sudden trying to bed in all these players and kind of start from scratch, when actually they finished 7th last season. They should be in maybe a different position by now. So yeah, I think Hull have had the worst window in the Championship. Again,
switching sides again, we're going to go to the best sign of the season and who that might be by the end of the season. There's plenty of names, there's plenty of candidates. It can be from any of the leagues. Who are you going for, Connor?
just to get on the Blues train again quickly, I can't look past Alfie May, because obviously having such a clinical goal scorer in your team, I think, makes all the difference. And I think come the end of the season, like, I think he could be the difference between Blues, you know, winning the league fairly comfortably, or like it being a tight scramble at the end between like some of the other teams that have started well and will probably push them far. I just think with 4-4 already, his confidence is already sky high. And the thing that surprised me most is how well he links up play as well. It's not just he's just a poacher who just, you know, takes his like 1 or 2 opportunities a game. He, you know, has been playing really well, like linking up with the other attacking players as well. And I think like that in itself is also just as valuable as the goals.
It's massively important, and we've seen it in League One before. It's such a hard league to bounce back out of at the first time of asking, and you really need that goal scoring. So, I mean, you've seen it with Wigan in the last 10 years, where Will Griggs just sort of, he finds that form in the new year, and then he keeps scoring on away days, and then all of a sudden he's second with 1 game to go. So.
I agree with Alfie May, but I'm going to be a bit different. I'm going to go Bobby Camworth at Newport, because this is someone I actually quite liked in League One with Burton Albion under Dine Mamria, and I've always felt like he's had that bit of trickery as a winger. But now I've looked at him at Newport, and he seems to have that bit more physicality to his game as well. So I think he's a very dangerous winger that I think if you're a fullback you'd hate to face, and I think Newport County have done well to spot him. So yeah, but Bobby Camworth at Newport I'll go with, just as an outside shout there.
Teams that have surprised you the most so far? I mean, if I was going to go with a candidate, it'd probably be Blackburn, because obviously there's a lot of things going against them at the start of the season, and John Eustace, there's still a lot of questions about him because of what happened last season and whether he can bounce back. They were torrid last year.
Well, Stage, you know what? I put Blackburn Rovers 24th in my 1 to 24, and within like 30 seconds of them on opening night, I'm thinking, oh God, I've made a terrible mistake.
We're all the same in the office, though. We're all the same in the office. Yeah. It's just like we've got a Rovers fan upstairs, and there's a lot of glumness because of the ownership, and people don't want to go to Ewood Park, but they do now because the team is exciting, it's fun.
Do you know what? I had 3 Blackburn fans on my podcast on the summer deep dives over on EFL Debate, and what was really interesting in the summer was fans were more engaged talking about the ownership issues than some of the on-field stuff, because that's really a thing on fans' minds, and I did think that would kind of become a problem, and they had the court case coming up on the 20th of August, and I thought with all those things combined it would be difficult for John Eustace, but like he did at Birmingham, Connor, I mean, he seems to be able to create a siege mentality and galvanise people in adversity.
Yeah, I mean, that, like, don't get me wrong, I feared for Blackburn going into the summer, but, you know, Eustace was the tiny little aspect of hope I think I had. Is like, I remember obviously Carl upstairs, who's a Rovers fan, speaking to him a lot about it, and I was like, don't worry, like, you know, give him a pre-season and he'll, like, you know, get a better understanding of the squad. He'll make them tough to beat. And obviously you talk about the siege mentality, he loves the term togetherness, old Eustace, and obviously you can see that is exactly what it is. All the players have been buying in, and it's just, you know, us against the world kind of thing, and it's obviously done brilliantly for Rovers so far. And, you know, obviously for the fans of a club that, you know, have not been in the best financial position for quite some time now, you know, you hope that you can, you know, fare them well this year.
Definitely. Have you boys got your own predictions for not predictions, but the team that surprised you the most?
For me, I might have to hold my hands up on Barnsley possibly, because I had them finishing 17th before the season, and I wasn't sure about Darrell Clark as a fit for Barnsley in terms of what they wanted and the model they're looking to go down. So I actually thought they were very unconvincing last season, and I predicted a drop off. But so far, I actually think they're playing better than they did last season. Now they kind of needed to, because the standard of the league's a lot stronger, but actually maybe I might have to fall on my sword a bit with Barnsley. But Championship, I'd probably go with Watford and Barrow in League 2.
Lovely.
Yeah, mine's a little bit of a hold my hand up kind of thing, because I remember appearing on one of these like in the summer before the season started, and I was basically saying, oh yeah, I think Wrexham will struggle more than Stockport in like adjusting to League One, and obviously so far it's like, you know, for both teams it's been very easy in the step up.
City pretty at the top, aren't they now? After they played and not everyone else did, so. Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, as I was saying to Gab earlier about Barnsley, you know, still a long way to go, but obviously, you know, right now you can't knock the teams for how they've started brilliantly. So
hot on the back of the pre-season predictions that we did, you might remember, Gab, we did a lovely long preview for the Championship, and we're going to dive into some of those predictions, and you've got a famous one that is looking very good right now. Very good. Sunderland, top of the Championship. Is it happening? It could be happening.
I think it might be, I think what really sort of attracted me about Sunderland in the summer was the age profile of the squad, and I think that there's players like Joe Bellingham, Jack Clark's gone now, hasn't he? So that's a bit of but Trey Hume, Dan Ballard, Anthony Patterson in goal, Dan Neil at the base of midfield. I think this is a really exciting squad that's just about to hit its peak, and I think with the right management, as we've seen, I think Regis Lebris has implemented a bit more of a pressing structure than they had last year, and there are some areas that we were maybe questioning some people might have questioned in the summer, like left back on up top. You've got Dennis Sirkin playing really well at left back now. You've got Elisa Mienda starting to score goals and link up play as well. Patrick Roberts looking like back to his best. So for me, I'm very excited about Sunderland. I think they're going to have a big season.
But just on Sunderland though, like I have a mate who's a Sunderland fan, and I remember when Gab's 1 to 24 dropped, and I was like, have you seen this? And even he was like, oh no, it's like, so even they weren't even believing it, but like even now he's thinking like, that could be an unbelievable shout, because he's like, we look so good compared to how like the season ended for them last year. So yeah,
we've all seen Sunderland sort of like the grey cloud era of just miserableness. They had Netflix documentary, and it's constantly getting close but never quite there.
Well, what's really interesting, Stay, is for the last 2 or 3 years they've been doing the opposite. They've been investing, instead of offering 5-year contracts to 35-year-old centre forwards on $100,000 a week. They've actually started investing in top teenage talent, and I think there was possibly a short-term downside to that, which was the lack of experience, but now those players have that experience. They're actually coming into their peak, and they're about to hit a massive sort of spurt in their development. So yeah, very excited.
It's a great bit of analysis from you, Gavin. You deserve all the credit. I hope it happens for you. I hope it happens for Sunderland. Adam thought that Luton would be the winners of the Championship, and obviously it's not started so well. I've even seen murmurs of the manager potentially being not hounded out of the club, but people aren't too happy with Rob Edwards.
Yeah, I think they need a few tweaks. I don't think they're a million miles off, I have to say. I do think they're creating chances. I think they've created the most big, clear-cut chances in the league, so they're clearly not far off. I think they just need to fine-tune things defensively at individual, isolated moments. I would think maybe in January they might look at seeing if they can bring in some experience at the back. But yeah, I think it won't be long, I think, before Carlton Morris and Elijah Adebayo start to catch fire, so I'm not too worried about them. I think it's any time before the 10-game mark, it's very early to start asking too big questions. I think you've got to see how things level out.
Absolutely, yeah.
Obviously, the one thing that I've noticed when I've seen Luton actually play like on the TV this season is like how much of a loss Ross Barkley has been in the midfield, because obviously he was so composed, and just everything kind of just went through him, and it's like losing such a integral player like that. I think they're kind of struggling now to find like a bit of a link between the defence to attack, although obviously they've been creating a lot of chances, and I think composure has let them down most of all. But yeah, I think, as you say, in time, when they've had more sessions on the training field, the international break has probably come at a great time for them, to be honest, to try and work on that, get it fixed. But yeah, I think sooner rather than later we'll see them starting to climb the table.
Looking at how Ross Barkley has left a hole in that midfield, do you think maybe Calvin Phillips, if he gets round the injuries that he's had, do you think maybe he can have the same effect in that team if Ipswich came back down and he doesn't stay? Maybe that can be a problem going forward, because Sam Morsey's getting on a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah, possibly. I feel like that's so far in advance, it's very difficult to...
It's hard to predict, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just sort of putting the
no, it's an interesting thought. I think it's too early to say anything about the 25. Let's focus on 24-25.
We don't do Premier League. Well, we'll move on into one of the bigger games next weekend, Leeds versus Burnley. It's a titanic clash. Yeah. And who's happy with the season so far? It's been very mixed. Well, it's been very mixed for Leeds. Burnley sort of chugging along, Scott Parker-esque. He sort of finds the rhythm after a while. Everybody sort of noise around the club quietens down, and they sort of get their heads down.
Well, I think Burnley were outstanding on their first game at 4-1 win at Luton. They did then demolish Cardiff 5-0, but I think that scoreline was a little bit... I think you speak to Burnley fans, I think for about an hour in that game they weren't great, and then they got off sort of flood of goals, and then they lost 1 at Sunderland, and then failed to beat Blackburn when they had, was it half an hour with 10 men? So they probably didn't sort of this is the thing I think with Burnley. I think they're good with long passes in wide areas and opening teams up that way, but I think when they've got to break a team down, I'm not sure. I think they're going to have to find some different ideas. So that's the big question for me on Burnley.
Do you think Scott Parker's sort of got the previous experience of being able to get a team to do that? Like, obviously his Fulham teams are really good, but you've also got Alexander Mitrovic up front, and that is, it sort of is a cheat code. And
or Solanke for Bournemouth.
Or Solanke, yeah. So.
Yeah, it's one of them, isn't it? It's like Parker, obviously he has the experience, but it's like he has success, but then for one reason or another, it then seems to sour, and you do wonder, will that happen after like a year or two of success at Burnley, or can it happen like mid-season? Because obviously we touched on how impressive they were in their 4-1 win over Luton on the opening day, but then how many of those players then left over the course with the transfer window still open, and obviously they've brought more players in to try and fill the void, but it's like, has the quality itself been replaced? Obviously time will tell, but obviously in comparing them with Leeds, I'd say I would probably give Leeds the edge in terms of the better start, just because they've still got the unbeaten tag. So
they do indeed. Who do you think maybe finishes higher this season? You could see both teams being in the top 3 by the end of the season.
Leeds, definitely Leeds.
You think Leeds?
Yeah, Leeds for me.
Easy enough then. Birmingham, Chris Davies, his first job. You never know what's going to happen. Hopefully he does well with the Blues. But if you had to get a manager out of the two teams, Daniel Farke or Scott Parker, who are you taking?
Daniel Farke, definitely.
I'd agree.
You think he's got the experience with the promotions with Norwich and a bit of Premier League time?
I'm not. I also think Daniel Farke is better at possibly people management. I'm not certain about that because I've not seen Scott Parker's methods firsthand, but sort of anecdotally, bits and pieces that you hear. I'm not 100% sure about Scott Parker, whereas I think Daniel Farke is possibly better at people management, I would think.
It seems that Farke is a bit easy to work with owners as well, not just the players. For Parker, it ended quite nastily.
He called out. He sort of said that they weren't prepared, which when you go public on that after you've just been thrashed 9-0, and then the next manager comes in and does a very fine job. So it's a strange one, but I think I'd agree with you there. Farke seems to be a better manager. If one of these two was to win the league, who do you think's that star player in the team? Who do you think's the one that could drive them? Ooh, good question. Because I think the interesting thing about that is I actually don't think Leeds are as reliant on individuals as they were.
I don't think so.
No, because last year you look at them, you think your 9s out of 10s, your Crescencio Summerfield, your Archie Grays, your Jorginho Rutas, they've gone, and I don't think they've got the same necessarily star players. Maybe Mana Solomon gets close to that, but I think they're actually better at creating chances collectively, and I think they're actually going to create more chances because they're not as reliant on individual players. So I think that this Leeds team looks a bit more like Daniel Farke's Norwich sides at this level. So I don't know if I'd think of it like star players. I think it's more how good they are as a team.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick a star player for them, I think I would go Ampadu. Just because obviously he's so good in helping connecting defence and midfield, wherever he plays. Obviously, I think you get the best out of him now if he's in midfield. But I think in terms of the quality of players, I think he probably has the best profile of it all because he can help tick it all nicely together. But I do agree with Gab's point in saying that I think it's more going to be a collective effort this year.
My eyes a little bit on Brendan Aronson. I'm sort of impressed by what he's doing. He seems to get a lot of chances, and eventually it's going to click for him. And
it's a bit of a surprise one, isn't it? It's a bit like Chuba Akpom at Middlesbrough a couple of years ago, where he was kind of been on loan the year before, and you weren't sure what role he'd play, and then all of a sudden he's kind of come into the first 11, and it's kind of a little bit unexpected. Mana Solomon's been great for me as well. I say for me, I'm not Leeds United manager, but. For me, Mana Solomon's being great. Really impressed. I love Pascal Strike at the back as well. He's been brilliant.
So we're moving on to your favourite subject, a bit of Blues chat. League One, we've chatted before about it being a really difficult league to bounce back out of. Do you think that's going to be easy with the money spent this summer?
I think, I mean, there's always an expectation, isn't there, with the money branded about. It has been slightly exaggerated in the media, and that's according to local journalists who have obviously got more direct sources at the club. But you know, it's still a huge gap between the rest of like the division's budgets. So, you know, there's a lot of expectation, but obviously that's the whole reason that this kind of like extravagant window has been done. It's like it's building for more than just a year in League One. It's building for a championship ready squad, because obviously the ultimate aim is to get the club back to the Premier League. So, you know, it's like the one thing as well that's been lost on some people is like, where's this money come from? It's like the revenue last year is like, I think, the highest we've probably ever seen as a football club. The undefeated for front of shirt sponsorship deal, I think last year specifically, was meant to be the most lucrative outside the Premier League. So, you know, like they clearly know what they're doing, the owners. They've got such a good business sense, and obviously they wouldn't be spending this money if they knew they were going to be, you know, working outside the regulations. So yeah, I think people just need to just accept that it's what happened, and you know, you just hope one day it can happen to your club.
Investing for the future, you would say, in Jay Stansfield, Gab?
It's a big investment for the future, isn't it? But yeah, I think, well, what I really like is that I don't even know if Jay Stansfield goes straight into the starting 11, because at the moment we only play one up top, and Alfie May started the season on fire, and I'm actually a big believer, I don't know what Conor thinks, of actually having a kind of meritocracy where if you're playing well, you keep your starting spot regardless of who comes in. So the idea of having a £15 million player on the bench in League One is quite a fun one, I think.
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about Stansfield this year is not just that he's here permanently now, like, and he's signed a 7-year deal. It's the fact that, you know, we probably will see him in his like more natural position, because obviously last year he was kind of forced up front because he was by far the most lethal and like talented goal scorer in the team, but you know, he kept making points in the media that it's like, oh yeah, like it's not even my preferred position, he likes to be in one of the positions behind. So
oh really, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, okay. He likes to be behind. So I think right now he's probably going to be eyeing up either the number 10 spot, which I'm very reluctant to give, because obviously, you know, Gab's point there is like, you know, if you're playing well, it's like, I've been very impressed with Willem Willemsen. Like I think like his defence splitting passes and weight of passes, you know, to send Alfie May away, absolutely brilliant. So I think right now the right spot, I think, is on the right side of midfield. I think that's a spot for him to take. But then again, there's a player who has been mostly underrated in his entire like time with us, and he joined last year, Keshi Anderson. I've always been so impressed when he plays. Like, you know, not only is, you know, able to drive the ball forward, but he's got the physique as well to handle like, you know, defensive challenges and stuff, and he's had a good start to the season. I'm a bit annoyed he's got injured again, similar to when he got injured last year. But yeah, I think Stansfield, I think he'll be aiming for one of those behind, and it's just a huge decision Chris Davies now has, because there's so many options.
Emil Hansen, by the way, looks like an amazing signing as well, doesn't he?
Yeah, like Hansen, it's like I want to see a bit more of him, because I feel like from what I saw of, you know, the classic, watch the YouTube highlights, like there were times in the Netherlands where he would sometimes try and go a bit more to the byline more and then get a cross in, whereas I think more he's been predominantly trying to get in on his right foot, like you do with like most wingers you see these days. But I think obviously with more time on the training pitch, I think, yeah, there's so much more to come from him.
Do you think it maybe gives Chris Davies a bit of an easier job? Obviously, it's definitely no job in football is easy, but spending that bit of money, bringing in a player that already knows the surroundings like Stansfield, and sort of bolstering the squad with players that are League One ready to be up in the higher echelons of League One. Do you think his life's a little bit easier after this summer?
Well, I think there's a lot of expectation that kind of comes with the territory, but I think it's possibly a nice job to ease yourself into because of the individual quality that he's got at his disposal. And I think, if you can get some success early days and ideally win the title at this level, that's going to help him going into the Championship, have get some favour with the fans. But I think it's a really exciting project here. I think these are extremely ambitious owners. You were talking about, I think they want to build a £2 to £3 billion sporting arena in the next 10 years. So that shows you the scale of the ambition there at Birmingham City.
It's the sports quarter, isn't it? That it's been dubbed. It's like, you know, it's like stadium, and obviously basically they'll want to emulate the city campus, basically the Etihad campus, and obviously there's plans for, like, you know, all hospitality sector, office, but, you know, just like long-term vision for not just the club but the city itself, which, you know, is what has like people glad to, you know, very happy to see with everything that's been going on.
Very exciting times. Looking at title candidates around you. Obviously, we spoke a little bit about Stockport and Wrexham.
Them, yeah.
I don't know how could you forget Wrexham? But we also spoke a little bit about Bolton as well. Sort of being around that area. Who's sort of making you worry? Who's making you sweat on these away days where you might be going in the middle of winter and thinking we might pull off a little 1-0 here. It might be a bit tetchy.
I definitely think going to Stockport's going to be difficult. Going to Stockport and Wrexham, both those teams, I think, are going to be difficult away days. I'm actually a little bit surprised at how slowly Wigan have started. I don't know what your sort of feeling was on them before the season, Conor, but I was really excited about them, but their start to the season's been a little bit undercooked.
I think with them it was one of those teams where you have a bracket of the sort of places where you can see them up finishing. It all just depends on like how the transfer window goes and stuff. But yeah, it's like from what I saw, because obviously we played them recently, and they did well, especially in the second half. Like to begin with, like the first half hour of the second half, they did really well to like manage us and like nullify us. And obviously they had a few chances themselves. Obviously, Peacock Farrell obviously like made a huge howler for their goal, but obviously that gave them a bit of momentum, and obviously it took us then having the extra man advantage when I think it was Sessegnon who was forced to go off with cramp, because obviously we'd made them run their socks off there, and obviously had to go down then and be under the cosh for the last 15-20 minutes, which has kind of been the story for Blues' season so far. It's like that's when we've tended to see our best attacking like patterns of play, because the opposition are just absolutely worn out, and we just absolutely bombard them with like bodies forward, and the chances seem to come. I think that's the one thing teams have got to be wary of, is like you've got to make sure you've got enough energy in the tank. But for Wigan though, I was impressed, but it's like I still think I expected a little bit more, because I thought in going into that game I thought this is the game where we could slip up, and obviously it nearly did happen, obviously. But I think from Sean Maloney and his team, I think there's more to come. But for their sake, I hope it comes sooner rather than later.
It's a young squad, isn't it, over at Wigan? Obviously they've had to rebuild of various different stages with different owners. It's just a bit. It was a mess for a long time. Yeah. So fair enough. Well, next Monday it's the Birmingham versus Wrexham. How are we feeling about that?
Nervous.
It could be a massive game to put a marker down, and obviously it's not at the racecourse at St Andrews, a big day out, and Monday Night Football. A lot of people are watching it, and it should be a really good game, shouldn't it?
I think it's going to be a really interesting test of where Wrexham are at, because I think we can probably judge where Birmingham are at without sounding too sort of arrogant about it. I'm aware that it might come across that way, but I think we can tell that we're obviously going to be one of the automatic promotion contenders. I think with Wrexham, there's a little bit of uncertainty about this test and whether they can pass it. They did get a point at Bolton, but they needed Arthur Okonkwo, the goalkeeper, for that. So I think this would be really interesting to see what sort of performance Wrexham put in.
Yeah, I think for Wrexham as well, I think from Blues' perspective, it's like this is going to be a test in itself, because obviously Wrexham are a team that they don't really need to see the lion's share of possession to punish teams. And obviously there have been a couple instances already for us where there's been like either a lapse in concentration with a pass, that two players haven't been on the same wavelength. And I think I saw a graph the other day where I think it was like high pressure turns in your own third. I think we were highest, because I think that those are the areas I think we tended to lose the ball the most. Mm-hmm. So I think it was just kind of getting a bit over the top with trying to play out from the back. So I feel like that's something that we can't really afford to let with Wrexham against us, especially.
Just another point on Wrexham. I think it's very easy to talk about the financial investment that they've got, but I'm also really impressed with the development of Max Cleworth and Ryan Barnett. Barnett is a right wing back that they signed in the National League, I think from Solihull Moors. He's a very direct player, but he's starting to learn to be able to drive infield and create chances and open things up that way. So again, he's adding a different side to his game. And then there's Max Cleworth, who's looking really nice as an overlapping centre-half. At the start of last season, when they'd just come up from the National League, they had loads of centre-halves, and the talk was that he was going to be loaned out to non-league, and actually he's made himself one of the first names on the team sheet. So yes, they've been able to afford individual quality, but they've developed players as well, and I think Ryan Barnett and Max Cleworth are probably examples of that.
It's just touching on Gab's last point, obviously Dan Scarr was one of the players they signed over the summer, and obviously has promotion experience from League One with Plymouth Argyle, and obviously I'm I may be wrong, but I don't think he's been able to push himself into the team just because of how well those defenders have been playing so far, and obviously just backs up his point greatly.
He's not been able to get in ahead of Mufasa, has he?
As if you want to win the league, make your own depth. That's what you do, isn't it? We're going to move on to the final section, the recurring section that we love to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. This one's for the entire EFL season so far. It's not just last week's. Feel free to visit your notes. I'll get us underway with my.
Try to do it very subtly. Yeah.
It's all right. With my good selection, we spoke a little bit about it before. Blackburn's undefeated start to their time in the Championship. I remember looking, it's just like things couldn't get much worse, bar the Venky's going to prison and they can't even pay the bills at all at the club anymore, which could have happened.
Yeah,
like we weren't too far away from that, and luckily Eustace is sort of, as we said before, he's reinforced the camp. Everything's sort of about defending their territory, and they look brilliant. So that's my good so far this season. Gab?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Barrow you've got to give some credit to as well, and especially Rory Feely, because in the first half of their 1-1 draw with Swindon on Saturday, Paul Farman was sent off and they didn't actually have a goalkeeper on the bench. So Rory Feely, the defender, I think he came on and played in goal, and just outstanding. I mean, just think about the kind of mentality or mindset you'd have to be an outfield player that's willing to just say, I'll go in goal, to be that one, and I think he did catch a ball once that was sort of a tame header, so came very close to a clean sheet. So fair play.
His deputy goalkeeper's goal set the record for most saves by an outfield player with 4.
Absolutely.
So fair play.
Very impressive.
Credit.
Connor, you're good.
Yeah, we've talked about them already on the pod. Like, it's just stock, but I'm just so impressed with them. Like, I like the football they play, and I've already said on this episode, it's like, considering like they haven't had the money to spend as Blues have, like they've still got such good squad depth in so many areas, and I think with this excellent start as well, it should serve them well for the rest of the season.
Can I just mention as well Watford, because I think there's a lot of uncertainty about where Watford are at. They didn't really have, to my eyes, a sort of core of players that going into the season that you felt like you could rely on, especially with Asprilla leaving and Hoot was linked away at the time, and they've actually been really impressive. They won 3 of their first 4 games, and I think Tom Cleverley seems to be doing a really good job in terms of Ryan Andrews right back driving forward. He's been really good as well, hasn't he? Very impressive with Watford.
Moving on to the bad, the things we don't want to say, and I'll get us underway. And this is more of a gene up call. If Luton Town fans are watching this, and you're going to dislike me for saying that you're in the bad category, this is more to motivate the players, show the players, sort of, come on lads, you were a Premier League team last year. Some of you have left, some of you are new, but bring back you were really staunch at home. The thing that got them in the Premier League. Like, I remember Sunderland going away there, and it was a really nasty game. It was like Sunderland were trapped in their own half. The pressure was unbelievable. The crowd were unbelievable. Bring it back. It's obviously tough getting on the back of relegation, and football on the whole doesn't really get like loud and exciting it's always exciting. But it's like the stands don't get loud till about March, do they?
Sure.
So bring it back, Luton. What are you doing in the relegation zone? Just win some games, man. Win some games. Get Edwards back up the table. We want to see that handsome man on the EFL highlights. So, Gab?
Yeah, I think Luton have definitely got some work to do. I think I'm a bit worried about Morecambe and Accrington Stanley. Morecambe have lost their first 5 games, all 1-0, and it's not like they've been too far away in any of their games. I actually saw them lose 1-0 at home to Newport, and they absolutely peppered them in the second half. So, but to lose 5 consecutive games 1-0,
not scoring at all,
and not scoring yet.
Team.
Cheltenham went 11 games without a goal at the start of last season. You do worry with Morecambe. They've not really got a cutting edge up top. Some concerns there, I think.
Connor?
Morecambe were who I had, just because of that.
I'm reading it this morning. It's just really hard to get your head around. Just like if you're the last team in the FL not to score it, you've probably seen it.
Could it become a bit of a monkey on the back?
That's what I mean. Yeah. You might see it on Twitter in the morning from a rival fan, and just go away.
It's like I remember doing like an article on the relegation odd favourites for the division. Obviously, Morecambe were up there. It's like delving into the situation. I just thought, even before a ball was kicked, it's concerning. Obviously, this just like hammers it home. Really, it's like it is troubling times.
I mean, if you've got that monkey in your back, you want to be in pre-season early, and you want to be sort of almost like writing the scripts of how your season's going to go and make sure the players get the buy-in and are ready for that. The ugly, and I'll start with it. Again, this is an EFL podcast, but this sort of reflects on the EFL, and that's the Premier League dropping Leicester's PSR charges. I think it's not a good thing for the EFL's prominence in the football pyramid in this country. I think if the EFL have charged Leicester and the Premier League choose not to continue with that charge, we're sort of entering dangerous territory where you can go balls to the wall, spend as much as you can to reach the Premier League, and as much as that's the dream, you can't. Like Leicester have been in the Premier League a long time. They've still got the parachute payments, and they still.
Stay, can I ask you, what's your view on parachute payments? Because there's one argument that says if you want clubs to be competitive in the Premier League, you've got to give them the insurance to offer these contracts to the quality of players that you need, so in a way that if they go down, it's not going to cripple the club financially. On the other hand, it's created, they've kind of bankrolled clubs coming down from the Premier League and given them a massive head start on other clubs in the Championship. So what's your view? What's the middle ground on
my sort of take on that is maybe look at how the teams who are coming down. So say if the three that went up this season, say Ipswich go straight back down, they've had 1 year in the Premier League. They should have been gambling on that like Luton did last season. Whereas Leicester...
Would you say Luton gambled in it?
Maybe not with the money spent, but I think that they picking up like Chong and stuff and some of those players, they weren't gambling on staying in the Premier League, but more making sure that they can be in and around that conversation this season.
Okay,
Whereas you look at Ipswich, they've done that with like Liam Delap and Smodics, but also Phillips. I suppose Phillips on loan doesn't matter because it's a loan deal.
Probably comes with big wages, I guess.
I'd say so, I'd say so, and probably maybe a clause if they stay up and they can pick him up on the cheap maybe. But I think a team like Leicester, where you've been in the Premier League for so long and obviously had so much success with that as well, I think maybe if you've had an extended period, maybe over 5 years in the Premier League, maybe you need to address those parachute payments because you should be invested in your infrastructure in that time. After 3 years in the Premier League, that's about 500 million you've made.
Yeah, it's a way of there needs to be a rule that covers a club's wage bill, but that doesn't automatically give them a massive I think there should be some rule on covering already paid wages, but not a rule on giving clubs a massive transfer budget already. I don't know what that would look like because I'm not a financial expert, but
turn that round on what we saw with Leeds selling players this summer. I mean, obviously a lot of those players going for the next step in their career, but maybe they could keep a Somerville or a Rutter, depending on those rules. But I just think it's not so good if Leicester are sort of getting away scot-free. We don't know if they come back down.
I mean, I guess I think the issues with parachute payments kind of symbolise the problems that we've got in the domestic game, where the money in the Premier League is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. My arm can't even reach high enough to emphasise it. And then that's having a sort of a knock-on effect because the wages are getting inflated at the lower levels, and there's a massive stretch.
Absolutely.
That's a bit of a problem that the domestic game's got to try and address, hopefully with the regulator.
So there's Northern Premier League teams paying people hundreds of pounds a week, and that's how insane football is getting in this country. So.
But it definitely feels like a similar scenario to when Bournemouth were first promoted to the Premier League, because obviously they kind of had a lot of investment in the team and whatnot to get themselves to promoted. And I'm pretty sure the story was at the time is had they not gone up that year, they would have been in a lot of trouble with the EFL. But obviously then because they came under the Premier League jurisdiction, it's just no problems. It's it feels very similar to that.
It's more examples of those two entities just not working together when everybody's best interest is what we should see on the pitch. And the Premier League, as ever, will continue to follow the money. Yeah. So, anyway, ugly. Gab or Conor? Which one?
So my one I've gone for is Cardiff manager Errol Bullitt. Because obviously, it never helps when a team has a disappointing start to the season. But we've already seen from him, I think, a couple of times already. He's already digging out a few players, namely Ruben Cole and Ollie Tanner, I believe it is. And he's been coming under a lot of pressure from the fans because obviously they know how talented Cole is, and obviously they want to see him playing. But he continues to persist with Aaron Ramsey, I think, in the number 10. And obviously, no disputing Aaron Ramsey is a fantastic player who's had a fantastic career. Probably not the same player now. Obviously, I think age is definitely creeping up on him. And obviously Colwill is this, really young, talented player.
I like Ruben Colwill, yeah.
And, I think fans are frustrated because obviously, you're not having the results as well with persisting with your decisions. And I don't know what specifically he said, but he's been digging out the players. And I just think, it's too early for you to be like, trying to like shield yourself by players. Like,
it's a strange club. Cardiff is a bit of to me,
don't let that get taken out of context.
Sorry, Cardiff fans, but it's like in my memories of just seeing like news bulletins about Cardiff in the last 10 years, there's always something unusual happening. Maybe there's some sort of influence with Aaron Ramsey playing from above the manager. I think he's probably on a bit.
That's the thing. For me, Aaron Ramsey's past his best, and whereas Ruben Colwill, I think, has got a massive future. And for me, Cardiff should be building around Ruben Colwill.
Definitely. Gab, your ugly choice.
Steve Evans.
Poor Steve.
I know. No, I think, a little bit of concern, I suppose, with Rotherham, just the one win so far. I think they came into the season with quite high expectations. I think they have been creating chances, but a lot of it's more like a high volume of half chances rather than clear-cut chances. So definitely stuff to work on, I think, for Rotherham United so far. They'll want to add to the win column.
The post-match conduct's a bit
yeah, he does have a go at referees and things like that, doesn't he?
He's storming off, not shaking hands. It's just, come on, you're a grown man.
Yeah.
don't be doing that. Anyway, are we all done? Are we happy with that? Lovely stuff.
I'm done for you.
Thanks very much for joining us for the Sportsman Untitled. Make sure you are subscribed to the Sportsman YouTube channel, and we'll be back next week.